What's going on, everybody? I hope you enjoyed that last video that I made. Told you a little bit about steelhead fishing and then got to see me catch a few steelhead as well. But today what we're going to be talking about is water conditions, the ideal conditions that you want for steelhead fishing. We're going to talk about the air conditions, what you want to look for the previous night along with the day that you're planning on going fishing. And then we're going to talk about, how to locate steelhead and, where to fish for them and stuff like that. So to start out with water conditions, the single most important thing that you want to look for is rising water temperature. So in the fall, you're out fishing, the steelhead are going to come into the river whenever we get that first batch of rain, say in late October, early November. After the salmon are pretty much all done, that's when you're going to have the majority of the steelhead come into the river, when we have that first good rain. And in the fall, you might want to have, a degree or 2 degrees rise in water temperature, maybe even more depending on the river you're fishing or the day. But that's going to be very important to turn those fish on to make them active throughout the day. In the winter time, as little as even a half a degree rise in the water temperature can be huge for a successful day when you're fishing in January, February time frame when the water temperatures are colder. If it's 35 degrees and you get that water temperature to go up to 35.5 degrees, that can be the difference in catching a few fish or not catching any at all. Another important thing is you want to have dropping and clearing water. So after you get a rain, or say after, in the winter time, you have a little bit of a runoff from a warm day when the snow's melting, and you have rising and dirtying water, that's never a good thing. So you want the river to crest, and you want it to be coming back down. Once the river's crested and the water is falling, you're going to have dropping and clearing water, and that's one of the things that you want to look for to improve your chances at catching a bunch of fish. Hooking a bunch of fish, I should say, because you can't land them if you don't hook them. A lot of people, if they're not familiar with steelhead fishing, if they go over to the water or they go over to the river and they're fishing and they can see 3 or 4 foot down, that's good. They may think it's dirty, but that's good. You want to have a nice stained condition to the water. You don't want dirty chocolate milk colored water, because the steelhead won't be able to see it. They can only see 6 inches in front of their nose, and it doesn't give the steelhead time to move to see your baits. If you do have dirty water conditions though, bigger flies, flashier flies, bigger spawn bags, that's going to be critical because it's going to allow those fish to see them a little better. If you're in lower clear conditions, you're going to want to tie your spawn bag smaller, use less flashy flies, smaller flies, stone flies, something like that. That can be a key to success. Okay, so the second thing that we're going to be talking about is air conditions. What do you want to look for on the day you're going steelhead fishing, and then what do you want to look for the previous night? So the day that you're steelhead fishing, I like to be fishing when I have cloudy, overcast conditions. That's going to let those fish be out in the open and not tucked up right next to the wood. So same with bass fishing. If you're out bass fishing and you have a bright sunny day, those fish are going to be tucked right next to the cover. That's where those fish are going to be located. Well, it's the exact same for steelhead fishing. If you have bright sunny conditions and low clear water, those fish are going to be in the log jams and you're not going to be able to get to them. So you want to have the over conditions. It's going to make those fish feel a little more protected, a little safe, and they'll come out of the wood, out of the spots, and they'll be all over the place. The previous night, what you want to have is, if you're fishing in the wintertime specifically, you want to have a cloudy night, because that holds the heat in and it doesn't let that water temperature drop as much overnight. Now, say in the early fall or in the springtime you're fishing, it's not going to affect it as much if it's not cloudy overnight, because the water temperature is going to be rising a bunch. But if you're fishing in the wintertime, the water temperature might not start to rise until 10, 11 o'clock or so in the morning, and that may be when you get your first bite. But if you have a nice cloudy, overcast night, that water temperature doesn't drop as much, you could be in for a really good morning right off the bat. So just remember that when you go to the Steelhead River. The next is how to locate steelhead. And in my opinion, there's two different styles. You can be float fishing or you can be bouncing bottom, and that's going to be in a hole or a pool, and generally those are deeper than your runs, and they're going to be, I feel for the most part, they're going to be on a bend of a river, and that's where your holes are going to be, the pools. Now the runs, I would say, are after the hole, where the river straightens back out, or a run can be caused by, a half fallen tree across the river and it directs or pushes the current to one side of the river. Or maybe you have two logs, say, one on either side, and it creates a pinch point, and now you have a nice run in the very middle of the river. That's going to be what I consider a run, and they're generally a little bit shallower than a pool. For steelhead fishing, I don't like to be fishing on sandy bottom. For salmon, I find that the salmon really like to congregate on the slow-moving sandy holes a bunch, but if you have a slow-moving sandy hole, the steelhead don't like the sand as much. They prefer hard bottom. Where these fish are going to be located, whether you're fishing in a pool or you're fishing in a run, they're going to be sitting right next to a parallel piece of wood that's laying on the bottom. They're going to be in a little divot in the clay, something like that. So say 20 years ago, there was a log jam at this one spot, and then in the springtime you had high water and it pushed that log jam out. What that log jam did, that old log jam, it created little pockets in the clay or pockets in the bottom, and that's where those fish now are going to be sitting, because it's been washed out and they can get out of the current. They can use less energy to stay in one place. And then when you drift a spawn bag, you drift a fly right next to it, those fish pop out, they grab it, and you're hooked up. Now, one of the most common mistakes that I find that a lot of anglers do when they're on the Steelhead River, or when they're first learning to steelhead fish, is they hear a report from some guy that this river has a bunch of steelhead in it and you should go there because there's a bunch of fish in the river. Anytime you get a big rain, there's going to be steelhead in every single river that's coming into the Great Lakes. Doesn't matter where you go, there's going to be steelhead in that river, I guarantee it. So my suggestion is pick a river when you're learning how to steelhead fish and fish it for a couple years. Once you start learning these techniques, where these steelhead are laying, then you can transfer those concepts to different rivers. You can go other places, doesn't matter where, but pick a river and just go to that river for 2-3 years straight and learn these techniques. Then you can build upon it after that. I think that's a really important factor, is doing that. And then when you're very first starting, to learn how to steelhead fish, or you're picking a brand new river to fish, even after you've, learned all these techniques for, 3 or 4 years, say, go to that river when you actually have terrible conditions. Go to that river in the summertime when the steelhead aren't in the river, when you have low clear water, when you have bright sunny skies, and find those spots. You'll be able to see, as long as you have a good pair of polarized glasses, you'll be able to see where those fish are going to lay. You're going to be able to see those parallel logs in the water, the little clay pockets and stuff like that. And then make mental notes. So then when you come back to that river, that spot in the fall, you know where those fish are going to be laying, because they will be in those little pockets. They will be next to those horizontal parallel logs in the river. So make those mental notes and then come back. This has taken years and years of experience from myself going on to the Steelhead River to learn all these things, and it all goes back to my dad teaching me everything. He taught me everything, and then it goes back to my great grandma. Actually, she used to be one of the best steelhead fishermen on the East Coast, and everybody knew her. So we're trying to pass this information along to help you guys catch more steelhead. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like my Facebook page and Instagram as well. Check them both out, and until next time, stay hooked up, tight lines, and we're going to be on the Steelhead River in the next couple days here. hopefully getting some more awesome footage. So stay tuned. We'll be hooked up soon.